Hello, everyone. This is the Sunday sessions with me, Emil Åreng, and obviously Mackmyra. And Today, me and the famous Tristan Stephenson will try Mackmyra Grönt Te, and we will talk a little bit how we work with it and how we feel that it should work in cocktails and how it works in general. It will be fun to try. So my name is Emil Åreng. I live in the northern parts of Sweden, in a fairly big town in the north called Umeå, and I work as the global bar ambassador for Mackmyra. And I started this job 1st of February, so I will be in charge of doing a lot of cocktails and been gonna fly when we can fly. Now no one can fly, so that's probably good for the environment, but not for good for Mackmyra or for anyone in the business. But I also work as the bar manager for Grand Hotel in Stockholm, and been doing that for about 2 years. So the Mackmyra is a fun project, and I'm looking forward to do a lot of fun things in the future. And today with me on the Sunday session, I have probably the most renowned bartender that we have in the world right now. It's Tristan Stephenson, a legend in the business, and one of my actual favorite bartenders, and actually also my favorite author. He's the writer behind the Curious book series, which you should everyone check up when you have the time.
I'll take the opportunity to plug that straight away.
Smart.
Thanks, Emil. Yeah, for anyone that doesn't know me, of which I'm sure there are many people, I also have a background in bartending. Been in the industry for around about 20 years and started opening my own venues around 10 years ago, starting with a bar called Pearl in London. And I've gone on to open another 9 venues since then, some of which I don't have anymore, some of which I do. But most relevant to this would be Black Rock, which is a whiskey bar in London. We now have a sort of second one above that in London, and also a third venue in Bristol. So we're expanding. We're hoping to open another one in London later this year. It's supposed to be opening next month, but that's not going to happen. And a little bit about Black Rock. It's the whole idea of Black Rock is to make whiskey accessible to everyone. We kind of want to do away with some of the stuffiness that can often surround the category, and take a more forward-thinking, probably like democratic approach to whiskey. That is to say, breaking down all the barriers of entry into the category that typically exist, trying to do away with all the confusion around whiskey, and just really talk about flavour and how to enjoy it. So that's really the basis of Black Rock. There's a lot more to it than that, but flavour is really the kind of linchpin of the whole thing. And then besides that, as Emil mentioned, I write books too. So I write the Curious Bartender series, which is now 7 books, 2 of which are dedicated entirely to whiskey. So I spend a lot of time traveling to whiskey distilleries. Not been to Mackmyra yet, but I'm sure when flights are re-established, that'll be on the cards, right, Emil?
Yeah. Yes, of course.
Yeah, and see, this is the reason why I agreed to do this, just so I can publicly twist Emil's arm to get me out to Mackmyra. So I spend a lot of time going to whiskey distilleries and indeed rum distilleries, gin distilleries. I think I've visited about 450 distilleries now through the course of my research for the books, and of course spend a lot of time tasting delicious things as well, which is the very reason why we're here today.
Cool. That's a good summarize. What do you feel like when you wrote all these books and all, because you've been to so many distilleries? Do you feel it's a big difference depending on countries, or especially whiskey? Do you feel it's a big difference on how everybody works and talks about it, or do you feel that everybody works kind of the same way but have different approach to the end product?
Yeah, I think one of the most amazing things about whiskey is that clearly, and let's just limit that to malt whiskey. Let's just talk about malt whiskey for a second.
Yeah.
Clearly, there is a design for that product. There's a way of making it, whether it's legislated or not. there are particular ways that it's generally accepted that malt whiskey is made. You use malted barley, you use pot stills, you use oak barrels, that kind of thing. And so on the face of it, you would think that all malt whiskey taste the same since it's the same ingredients. But this is where it becomes fascinating, I think. You know, you travel around, and you don't even need to travel, of course. You can just go out and buy this stuff, and you taste it. And it's then that you start to get a little bit of a sense of the place in which the products come from. And I think that a lot of the time that's, by design, it's on purpose. A distiller will have an idea of how they want their product to taste, perhaps similar to another product that's on the market. And then maybe they'll try and steer the liquid in that direction, in so much as you actually can steer the liquid in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I think that there's a more sort of discrete process going on there as well. And that's a lot of the decisions that are made during the whiskey production process, the barrels that are selected, the blending process. There is something discrete going on, and that's something less conscious. And that is that perhaps, let's take Japanese whiskey as an example. You tend to find that some of the flavors in those products are quintessentially Japanese.
Mm-hmm.
You tend to find umami notes, maybe green tea notes, which we'll come on to talk about. Now, did someone sit down and say, I want this whiskey to taste that way? Probably not, I think. But because those are the flavors of that particular culture, they kind of weave their way into the fabric of the liquid that these people are producing as well. And I think that's true I think it's true of the Nordics as well. I think it's certainly true of Scotland, which typically has that sort of heather, honey, fruit and perhaps peat quality to it. And obviously American whiskey has its own style too. So I think that one of the beautiful things about malt whiskey when you get into it is that, yes, everything's made in much the same way, but there are new things to be found all the time. And it's sort of similar to traveling. You get to experience the place in which this product comes from through the flavor of the liquid, and that's really fascinating. And I think as being someone that travels these places, that whole idea is just reaffirmed to me time and time again, because once you go to visit the distillery, you see what's going on there, and you find that actually there are nuances and distinctions in every single one of these places, and that's why you end up with different products.
Yeah, that's a good answer. And it's also like, if we look at the business, it's always have been that we focus on one particular group that want to drink whiskey, and then that is older men. So I think that is, you see how all the distilleries all around the world try to bring out the new audience to taste new whiskey, and that is the younger audience, and they don't drink as much as anyone has ever done before, so they drink less, and so it's I think it's a big challenge for all the distillers all around the world to see what we can do for the younger people. And the thing we're going to try today, I think that is a great invention to try to bring a new audience and to bring something new to our palates and to make a totally different whiskey. So this is the bottle, Mackmyra, Grönt Te. Grönt Te means green tea. So yeah, it's not that hard to get. But Mackmyra Grönt Te is Angela, which is the master blender for Mackmyra and is the genius behind all the Mackmyra flavors. She's a big fan of green tea, and we try to do seasonal whiskies every year for Mackmyra. And green tea is more. We talked about it a little bit before the show, me and Tristan, on what kind of flavor notes we try to find in it, and it's a very special whiskey in that way that I think it has a more, like, because it's 4 different green teas in it. I'm just gonna pour this up. I think I poured a perfect ounce.
Yeah, me too.
And it's 4 different green teas, and they all have certain notes to that you can find in the whiskey that goes really well with everything else that Mackmyra stands for. So it first has been in a Oloroso sherry cask, and after that you put it in a cask that's been filled with 4 different green tea leaves. And I think for me, I don't know about you, but it's very nutty, it's very floral, and And if you compare this to a lot of other different single malts all around the world, this is a classic. It's still a classic Mackmyra. You can still feel the things that we've been doing for the last 15 years. And but I think it has that herbal note that you can't find in so much whiskeys at all. If I should, because everybody talking about a grassy note, but I think this is more herbal. If you compare it to a little bit like a chartreuse or whatever, I think it has a different note, and I think that is a cool thing about the Grönt Te, that it has something new to bring to the table.
Yeah, I think there's. I mean, I feel like I can detect some of the sherry cask for starters. There's definitely a nice fruitiness to it and a certain tropical character coming through it. But to that herbal note that you suggest, I think you're right, and you know, it comes to me as a sort of dry grass kind of aroma, which I'm imagining is the impact of the tea in that cask. And am I right in thinking that the tea is stored in the cask in its dry form, right? It's not that it's a...
It's more like a liqueur that they actually infuse it in the...
Yeah.
Okay. So it's probably dry tea, and then you put it down in a liqueur, and then you do a maceration, and then you pour in the whiskey after you empty it.
Yeah.
But the girl that's in charge of the tea is Yoko Ono. We all know her, but this is a different Yoko Ono. I think. I don't think Yoko Ono is in the tea business at all. This is the most legendary tea. What do you call it? Do you call it tea master?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the most legendary tea master that we have in Sweden.
Oh, okay.
Called Yoko Ono. So she's based in Stockholm, and so she and Angela picked out 4 different green teas that would go well, and this is the end result.
So it's delicious whiskey. It's really tasty.
Yeah, it is. It's really well balanced. Yeah. It's really well balanced. And
that's the thing I'd say. And I think sometimes with like cask finished whiskies, which I guess you would class this as, you tend to find things go off balance, right? I mean, it just gets massively steered in one direction, whether that's sherry or red wine or whatever it might be. Whereas with this whiskey, it doesn't feel like balance has been lost. And indeed, perhaps balance has been achieved. You know, maybe this is more balanced than the liquid that went into those casks. So whatever the effect of the green tea cask, it's obviously a good one because you come out with a balanced whiskey at the other end.
Exactly. But it's a great invention, I think, doing something completely different, because this is actually a cool match between Japan and Sweden, which is not like, I can see how we work a little bit in gastronomy. We work pretty much the same in how we work with fish and different things, and also with pickling and fermentation. Sweden and Japan is not that far from each other. How we work, we don't do sushi the same kind of things that we do in Sweden, but how we have these omakases, it's kind of the same thing in Sweden, how we work with it, and we like to gather people and try different new things. So I think it's a cool match between 2 countries that are very, very far from each other, both in how people present themselves and culture in all ways. We're more like ABBA, and they're more like samurais.
Yeah. I've never heard ABBA and samurais mentioned in the same sentence before.
No, they have nothing to do with each other. I have never done. So this is the first time, actually. I think that would be a good review for the whiskey. It's like ABBA and a samurai.
Yeah, I don't think ABBA would come off too well in that, unless it was a singing competition.
I don't know how the samurai sings anymore. It's.
No, I don't either, but I can pretty well guess how well ABBA fight with swords.
It's not good.
No, it's not good.
Then it's not that lethal as it looks, but no. But the 4 teas that they use, it's Jame Sencha as one of the teas, and then it's Karibo Hoyisha. I don't know how to really pronounce it. I just try to sound a little bit more Japanese than I usually do. And it's Jame Gyokoro and Jame Matcha. And Matcha we know, Sencha we know, but Hoyisha bringing a nutty tone to everything. And Jame Gyokoro is more the umami note to it. And I think you can feel the umami note if you add a little bit of salt and try to get a different tone to it. I think the vanilla comes forward, but the umami tone, it comes forward if you have a little bit of salt.
Sure.
But we talked a little bit how to work with it before, and I think like when we try it now and how to feel like it work in a cocktail, I think it's pretty easy going anyway.
Yeah.
Like it's still pretty. It's not that stiff. It's because it's so balanced. You can use it in so many different ways in a cocktail.
Yeah,
Or
totally.
what do you think?
Yeah, totally. I'll make a drink now with it, just to demonstrate that. You're absolutely right. I mean, there's not so much concentration and intensity there that you need to be really kind of careful with it. Otherwise, it's going to kind of overpower. It is a mixable liquid. And I mean, one of the things that we talk about at Black Rock a lot is accessibility of whiskey. And again, like talking about flavor and cocktails are a great way of doing that. You know, there are tons of people out there that really like whiskey, but there's many more who don't realize that they like whiskey, and it's our job really as a bar, but you know, as an industry, to try and find those people, because as whiskey lovers, we're well aware of how much enjoyment can be taken from this category. So one of the ways in which we do that is with cocktails, because cocktails are, it's like easing someone in gently, you know. It's like a spoonful of sugar in the medicine. You know, you don't want to hit them with a kind of cask strength, heavily peated liquid straight off the bat, you know, because most people are going to be a little bit repelled about that, you know, straight off. In the UK, at least, anyway. So yeah, we find ways of mixing with them, and that's fun in itself, because you get to look at the liquid, as any great bartender should. You should look at the liquid you're using and find out which points of the flavor you're wanting to accentuate or amplify or contrast with the ingredients you're using. And if there's a story behind it as well, as there is with the Mackmyra green tea. So first one I'm going to do is, actually, it's perfect for the weather we've got here in the UK at the moment, which is glorious sunshine, a little bit windy. Obviously, no one's going out and socializing, or at least they shouldn't be. But there's nothing to stop you making a drink like this and sitting in your garden or on your balcony, or just opening the window and enjoying it. So it's kind of a highball, but I'm serving it in a wine glass because by the way, can you see me moving? Because my screen's frozen at my end.
Yeah, I will see you move.
Okay, cool. As long as you can see me moving.
You're moving really fast.
So yeah, I'm using a wine glass because the drink I'm making, based on a highball, so like whiskey lengthened with something fizzy, is going to end up roughly the same strength as a glass of wine. And also because this is a drink that doesn't require ice, so you can just chill the components down in your fridge and then pour them into a glass. And so what you're going to end up with is something that's the same strength as wine and the same temperature as wine, and therefore should be enjoyed when you would normally drink wine. Okay, so I have already chilled and put in a thermos flask two of the ingredients, that being the Mackmyra green tea and some green tea. Okay, so I mix those two components together 50-50 and pour them out into the glass. Hope you can see that. And you want to round about a 35 ml measure of the whiskey, so we're looking at about 70 ml of that liquid poured into a glass. And then all we're going to do is just top up with tonic water, and I've actually got the Mackmyra Creator tonic here.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Now that tonic's particularly good for this kind of thing because it's got some real kind of earthy, nutty, woody kind of notes to it.
Yeah.
Which are gonna just aid with binding that quinine flavor to the whiskey. You've got a common denominator there in that woody flavor, and you know, also perhaps that sort of woody nuttiness has a synergy with the green tea as well. If you think about the way in which green tea is made, it's a leaf that's dried and it develops those kind of nutty characteristics. And I mean, some of the teas you've just mentioned would be described as being quite nutty. So we've got three ingredients that should all play really, really nicely together. So all you do is like a white wine spritzer. You just top up with tonic water, and you know, tonic water might not seem like an obvious pairing with whiskey, but it does work really well, especially when you've got an ingredient like green tea that forms a link between the two. And then I just finish with a twist of lemon, and that's it. It's really cold and yes, delicious. You're getting citrus notes, of course, off the lemon, but you know, there's citrus notes in green tea as well, and it's bringing out some of those grassy, fresher notes in the whiskey too. Cheers. God, that's actually really, really good.
But isn't it pretty fun to work with, like, because we bartenders always talk about ice, which is super important, obviously, because you need to dilute and you need to chill and you need to balance and everything. But isn't it fun to work without ice, just because you can do a different set of temperature?
Yeah.
You can make the whiskey come forward in a totally different way because every time you chill it, you kind of have the same, but you take away a lot of the floral notes, you take away a lot of the herbal notes and the woody notes, because when you chill a cocktail to perfection, it takes away some of the flavors, but it enhances other flavors, like vanilla comes forward in a totally different way. And but when you do a cocktail like this, I think it's because you don't usually have a fridge at home, but sometimes you don't have ice, obviously. And
Totally.
I think it's a smart way of doing a cocktail.
It is, like you say, especially for at home, because you need a lot of every bartender knows you need a lot of ice in a cocktail bar. Like, and if you're planning a cocktail party at home, I always recommend ordering about 3 times as much ice as you think you're going to need, and you'll probably still won't have enough. But when drinks like this, I think it's easy to produce at home. You can prepare in advance, and also ice is considered to be intrinsic to cocktails, but it really shouldn't be. I mean, if you think about the 2 most popular alcoholic drinks in the world, wine and beer, right? Yeah. You do not need ice for those, and in a sense, cocktails are kind of going up against those drinks. Every time someone orders one, they're competing against beer and wine, because beer and wine are easy, comfortable choices for people. So creating a mixed drink that simulates the effect of wine in both its strength and, you know, the intended occasion in which it should be consumed, I think is a pretty smart move. Especially when it allows you to bring a story into the drink that perhaps would be missing from a glass of beer or wine.
Yeah, I think it's really smart too, and it's also fun that you mentioned beer and wine, because if you use ice to beer or wine, it's a really crappy wine or a really crappy beer.
Yeah.
And so pre-batching things before, because people also thinks like it's hard to have a party at home and do actual really good cocktails, because they think it's a big of a hustle, but they still can do like a Nobel Prize dinner. Because that's not a problem.
Yeah.
So, like pre-batching cocktails and doing that, I think it's such an easy way, and you can have it there for days if you want to.
Yeah. Like I say, these things are definitely your friend. Thermos flasks.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you can batch and bottle and put in the fridge. That's fine. But let's say you're sat outside and you don't want to be going back and forth to the fridge. You decant it into one of these things. They stay cold all day. So you can just sit there with a crate of tonics and this thing here and just keep on making these drinks outside or in your lounge or wherever it is you are. You know, if you know, outside of social distancing measures, you want to go on a picnic, you want to go to a party, bring it all with you in a thermos flask, because that thing will keep you chilled. You don't need ice. You can just pour it. It takes away so much of the faff.
Yeah, it's really. I think it's really smart, and I think people at home should take that with them too. That it's easy to make good cocktails if you have the time to prep something else, because you can do like a classic whiskey soda. It's still a good cocktail. It's still a good drink, but it doesn't take that much time to do this. And especially if you're a big fan of whiskey, this is the way to go and try to work like this.
I think that's another thing as well about cocktails like this with whiskey is they're quite surprising to people who think that they understand whiskey. They think that they know what the occasion is when whiskey should be consumed, after dinner or in a gentleman's club or whatever it might be. Yeah. And then you can hand them a drink like this, which is like super refreshing, you know, really enjoyable, like afternoon, sunny day, springtime drink, and go, here you go, here's a whiskey cocktail. Yeah. And then kind of like enjoy how surprised they are that this is a mixed drink made using a, you know, really good quality Swedish whiskey.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that also is a little bit because people that doesn't like whiskey cocktails, usually they only tried one 10 years ago. and after that you're done. It's the same thing like when you had the tequila for the first time.
Yeah.
No one liked it the first time.
Yeah, that's it. And there's another problem with that. The way which we build up aversions to drinks is often we are trying them when we've already had a lot of drinks, and therefore not in the best place to be objective and to really appreciate what's going on in the glass. Like you say with tequila, I mean, no one drinks their first tequila when they're stone cold sober. You know, you've
No
already
one.
had no one. You've already had plenty, and then you blame the tequila the day after. And I think it's the same with whiskey cocktails. Too many people, you know, finish the night with a whiskey cocktail or do it midway through the night. Perhaps it's not the best drink in the world, and therefore they build up their prejudice around what a whiskey cocktail is. And you know, whiskey's super dynamic. It can be used in so many different ways in mixed drinks, especially with the range of flavors out there. You know, within the whiskey category, even within the Mackmyra range. You know, you've got smoky whiskeys, lighter whiskeys, that kind of thing. You can make a lot of different styles of drinks just with that set of liquids.
Yeah, that's really good. And people also like when they had the last whiskey cocktail about 3 a.m, and they're like, I shouldn't have the last whiskey cocktail. Well, you should have thought that when you drank like 45 beers and 8 liters of wine, and you blame the last whiskey cocktail.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh, I shouldn't have mixed my drinks. Yeah.
No, you shouldn't, but it's too late now. Well, cool. That's a great recipe, Tristan. So what do we have next?
So the second and last one is a stronger drink, probably a little bit more like the whiskey cocktail we've just talked about. Maybe first encounter would have been for many people. So based on an old fashioned, but I think again, old fashions probably get a bad reputation in the sense that people look at the ingredients and go, "What? It's just whiskey and sugar and bitters. That's it? Like, whoa, that's a strong drink." And it shouldn't be. It doesn't need to be. It should be well diluted, an old fashioned cocktail. And obviously nice and cold as well, and therefore shouldn't have the heat you would expect from a neat glass of whiskey. Should be accessible. So this is so simple, it's ridiculous, but it works really, really well. So as I say, old fashioned would typically be whiskey with bitters and sugar. Now I have combined the bitters and sugar component together in this little. Oh, it's actually quite Swedish looking, isn't it, this jug?
Yeah, very.
That wasn't intentional. I've combined the bitters and sugar together in the most simple possible way, and that is to brew a really, really strong cup of tea and then sweeten it. Okay. And the tea, the bitterness, the tannin in the tea, it forms the bitter part of the bitters. And then all I'm doing is adding, I use coconut sugar. Okay, raw coconut sugar.
Okay.
And the reason for that is that coconut sugar is super sustainable. It's also like highly unrefined, which means that it's got a lower glycemic index. It's slightly better for you. But also because coconut sugar has an amazing flavor. It's sort of like toffee caramel. It's not a strong flavor, but it has this nice toffee caramel flavor to it. So what happens here when we combine it with tea is you get some of those sort of spice, nutty, earthy flavors from the tea combined with toffee and caramel from the sugar, and all of those descriptive terms that I've just used would be relevant to an oak barrel, right? Spice, nutty, toffee, caramel. All right. So what we end up with is sort of tannic bitters that is almost like a concentrated barrel flavor. Okay, and literally every house in the world has the ingredients in their cupboard to make this, unless you don't like tea, in which case there's something wrong with you. So really simple. I've got a glass, a few ice cubes in there, which have been slowly melting away, but never mind. Pour in around about 50 ml. You know, whatever.
It's a Sunday. That's a great thing about the Sunday sessions. You don't have to measure anything.
And then again, I've not really used this concentrate yet, so I'm going to guess around about 5 ml. But I'll just taste it and try it, and then we stir it. It's almost the way in which this stuff tastes, this tea bitters. I mean, it's got a strong flavor. It's so chocolatey. It's almost like you've got concentrated barrel extract, tannin and sweetness and chocolate and caramel and all those things. So you stir it through here, and it just adds another level to the whiskey, really kind of brings through a rich chocolate quality. And I was thinking about it when I was making this. Like, one of my favorite implementations of green tea in gastronomy is when you get green tea frosting on chocolate cake.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever had like matcha frosting. Sometimes you get chocolate brownies with green tea, and there's something about that grassy green tea flavor matched with cocoa. It's just delicious, and that's more or less what you're going to get in this glass. So,
yeah, you see a lot of like great, like that look great.
Yeah, just threw it back up in the glass.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, it's so good.
There was like a
Try
little,
this.
there was a little shard of ice that came out of me. I must confess, I don't have a professional quality ice machine in my house. So the ice cubes are not great quality.
But it's also like the ice at home is only for chilling. It doesn't have to be like the best ice in the world, especially when you don't pay for it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I really like that you talk about how matcha tea is used, especially in gastronomy, because you see all these like great pastry chefs all around the world doing these great combination, especially with matcha on top, and it also looks great. It also looks like really cool. It's a great garnish for anything actually.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, you can see that also when you have like a big ice cube, you can have some matcha on top of it, just like a grassy layer or whatever.
Yeah, because it's just so bright green, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's expensive though. That's the only thing with matcha. It's not cheap, eh?
Yeah, it's really expensive, and that is also like a cool thing with this kind of whiskey. It's not that expensive.
Yeah.
It even though it's like it's expensive ingredients and it looks very expensive, but it's really not. So the thing when we started to talk about doing the Sunday sessions, why we do it, obviously because everybody have a hustle doing everything now because of Corona, but it's also a great way for Mackmyra to give something back in some kind of way. So we're going to talk a little bit how we will like try to sell it especially in UK, because we have a web shop. So it's mackmyra.co.uk, and when you order this one, the Mackmyra Grönt Te, for now and 24 hours forward, you will get an £8 discount, which is really good. But those £8 goes back to you guys at Black Rock, which is, I think, it's a great initiative. And,
no, it's really cool. This is a really tough time for bars, restaurants, hotels, obviously everyone, but the hospitality industry is really going to suffer badly because it's an industry that really gets by week on week. Our margins are very small, not just Black Rock but everywhere, and obviously we've been forced to close in the UK. We don't see that situation changing for months, since clearly bars are one of the prime sources of social contact, and so it's questionable whether a lot of the bars and restaurants and hotels are going to survive this. So we need support from the government, but support from brands like Mackmyra is also invaluable, and it's amazing to have sort of partnerships like this where it's mutually beneficial. We can do live video chats like this and talk about ways in which you can use the liquid, and our philosophy at Black Rock. We hopefully sell a few bottles of Mackmyra, and if some of that money comes back to Black Rock to help us support our team, to help us eventually reopen, hopefully, and pay some of our bills, then that's amazing. Because it's worth mentioning that these things are by no means guaranteed. There will be, you will have favorite bars out there that will not reopen after this.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the reality of it. So any kind of help we can get is hugely appreciated.
Yeah. So we're glad to help in a way we can, and hopefully we'll do this every Sunday now until this Corona thing is over. We don't.
Let's hope it doesn't go on too long, Emil, because we're going to run out of things to talk about.
We're going to do the Mackmyra Grönt Te again in 2 weeks. No, hopefully this will end, and we can just pray that everyone can reopen, but we should be honest too, and it will be hard for everyone. everyone in the business will take a really hard punch in the face of everything that's happening in the world right now. But the promotion code is pretty straightforward. It's Black Rock. So when you go into mackmyra.cu.uk, you order a bottle of Mackmyra Grönt Te, and you press in the promotion code Black Rock, and £8 go directly to Black Rock, and you get an £8 discount. So I think, yeah, that's great for everyone. So
Really, really
order
cool.
a lot. The more the merrier. I think we're pretty done for the day. Everybody, you can enjoy the sunshine. I think I will too. It's pretty cold up here in the north, but the sun is going to stay up for a couple of hours. So I'm not going to hit the beach, but yeah, the closest thing we have it's a snowy garden outside here.
Great, thanks Emil for this. It's been fun, and I have to say, like, this isn't a drink that we serve at Black Rock. I kind of made it for this particular session, but it might be going on the menu at Black Rock because it's really tasty.
Very good. I like that. So probably we'll see you next Sunday, you and me, and everyone out there. Take care of yourself and stay healthy.
Yep. Cheers.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye.